Hey, folks, welcome back. You look great. That's better, Tim, actually. It is Wednesday, April 29th. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. You guys can follow me at Twitter, at Peoples_Pundit. And I'm joined by Tim. The light looks good, Tim. Light looks good. Tim the Source Anderson. And you can follow him, folks, at Twitter, at TJ Anderson1. Let me just start this off by saying I know there's like a lot of debate over New Mexico, and I don't want to blaze through New Mexico. So we're going to start New Mexico today, and then we're going to finish it up tomorrow because I got a couple of things I just got to do today, folks, and we're going to have a 1-hour show, okay? And we got GDP numbers out, so I don't want to blaze through anything and miss something that is important. We talked about Colorado yesterday. Colorado, right? I try to say it every state the way they say it from where they're from. We talked about them yesterday and the difficulties, for a Republican candidate to flip that state. But the question remains: is it easier to go after Colorado for Trump or any Republican candidate, or is it easier to go after New Mexico? It's easier to go after Colorado, and I'm going to take 2 days because New Mexico is important. I don't want to go through it, especially given all the claims. So we'll run through on the surface today. We'll do the dive into the voter analysis, and then we'll take a little bit of look at some maps, but we're not going to really deep dive into those maps until tomorrow. I also will have I'm not going to blow it up yet. I'm going to tease it. We're going to have an exciting announcement here soon. And starting on Monday, we're going to, for a week, we'll see how it goes. We're going to have a brand new cool segment about polling and bring you very new polling on the show. It's going to be cool. So I don't want to blow. I'm going to tease it, right, Tim? I'm not going to tell everybody yet. Just going to tease it. All right. But
maybe tomorrow we'll let it
maybe tomorrow, right? Maybe tomorrow.
Friday. No,
yeah, it's Thursday. It's Thursday. Yeah,
I don't even know what day it is.
But you know what? It'll be like you said, by that time it'll be much easier. So let's get into, Tim, before we dig into the report, first quarter GDP, I got to be honest, I was a little bit surprised by this. It felt so it's negative 4.8 for the first quarter. The Bureau of Economic Analysis said that it was March, and it was the stay-at-home orders issued in March that weighed down the rest of the quarter. If you watched yesterday, Tim and I, the consensus was negative 3.7. So this is a little bit worse than consensus. I was a little bit shocked to see March weigh down the rest of the quarter this badly. So they will be revised, but unfortunately, I think it'll be revised worse. So, Tim, why don't you just tell us what's going on with the markets and give us some feedback over here?
So, just a little bit on GDP. I just think that clearly a lot of things in the economy had started to shut down before the official shelter-in-place guidelines from the CDC were rolled out on March 15th on a Sunday that really went into effect for March 16th. I think you'd already had a lot of businesses start to shut down but before that, at least the second week, maybe part of even the first week, you already had hotel occupancies down significantly, and you had already had shopping, I think, curtailed significantly, certainly in-store shopping. And I'm just getting that from looking at the details of the GDP report. Inventories down 16 billion versus being up 13 billion in the fourth quarter, being up 70 billion in the third quarter. Equipment down 15%.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Net trade was a little bit better, as we talked about yesterday.
It just wasn't enough.
Some of the and the imports also down 15%. Exports were down less than that. So that was a net positive on trade, but still with the imports being down that much, that played into effect. And the consumer spending down 7.6%. The consumer 70% of the economy.
Yeah.
So anyways, the markets are having a great day today. They
Amazingly.
have, well, you had very good earnings from Google last night after the close. Google was up about 8% in after hours trading. Sometimes we don't put a huge emphasis on after hours trading, but Google is trading much higher again today. Their advertising revenues had fallen off much less than what they had expected and what the estimates were. There are definite signs that advertising is down across the board, across pretty much most mediums in April. But clearly, these were first quarter earnings, and they are somewhat benefiting in some of their services businesses from the just ramp up in anything digital, virtual, that's an offshoot of the work at home, stay at home, stream Netflix all day long economy.
Right.
So the Dow's up 450 points. It's up 1.85%. There's also some positive news on a remdesivir drug. And remember, that's been a very headline sensitive topic.
Yeah. And it had that bogus study.
Right. One day when there was a bogus story out
Yeah.
coming from a bad trial they had in China with people that were almost nearly dead
It wasn't
anyways.
really a full study. I mean,
right. It wasn't an official study, and the people were probably in too bad a shape to really get a benefit from it. So that's part of the positive. And Google helping, I think, is doing well. And I just think, again, the optic that we've seen the last couple of days of everything starting to initial signs that the economy is opening back up. Yesterday we pretty much, after we lost those early gains yesterday, we'd almost lost them by the time we came on the air.
Yeah.
And now we're holding most of these gains. With Dow's up 440, the S&P's up 2%, NASDAQ, NASDAQ is up 2.5%, the Russell's up 3%.
And no kind of movement in the last couple of minutes here, Tim. And the only reason why I say, I mean, we talked about this before too. I mean, we know what's going to happen. They had the National Association of Realtors come out today. Pending home sales, while you were talking about what was going on in the markets, they fell. It's pretty ugly. It's negative 20.8. The consensus was negative 10. But we have. I didn't go in and see what Yoon actually said, and that'll be updated for the charts on PPD later. Of course, we do that pending home sales, regionally too. So it could be, and that's what I'm interested in. I wonder, let's look at the full press release. I can't help but to think, how bad was this regionally, Tim, right? So looking at regions, the Northeast dropped 14.5%. The South, the South dropped almost 20%, 19.5%. And the West, are you ready? Because this is California, Tim. You ready? We were talking about this before with Gavin Newsom. So how badly, folks, did Gavin Newsom hurt home sales, pending home contracts? 26.8%. Wow. That's, I don't know. I'll go and I'll look and we'll talk more about it. Of course, that may be a record. I don't know that I've ever, I look at these indicators monthly as we're putting them up. I don't know that I've ever seen that kind of dip, though. Maybe what do you think? During the financial crisis, maybe, I don't know. I don't want to, I don't
I think we had a slow, gradual erosion in the housing sales during the financial crisis. Clearly, there had been a bubble in real estate prices. There had been very, very, very lax practices in mortgage and refi applications. People were refining almost every 18 months as rates were going down. And taking all the money out they possibly could, lopping a home finance loan on top of it, taking cash out, buying another house, doing the same with that. The feeling was, asset prices were just, going to continue to at least maintain those levels. Even Ben Bernanke, the then president of the Fed, said relatively late in 2008 that we feel that this decline in housing is isolated to subprime lending
Yeah.
and da 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 da. That was just a real miss by him. So look, I think a big difference between real estate sales, unless people get permanently displaced or feel like they're being permanently displaced, a lot of these retail sales, residential sales that aren't happening in late March or April, you'll just have that many more in May and June. Whereas with restaurants and bars, they really can't make up for lost time.
Yeah, it is what it is. This is also too. I just want to say, this is a lot of the. I mean, these are pending home sales, right? Contracts. Sometimes, Tim, simple things about the procedure may be slowing stuff up too.
Yep.
You know, I mean, with stay at homes, this is for March. You know, so if there were those, you know, it's not so much the banks, even though the banks are going to tighten up now. It's not so much the banks. It's, you know, some things with, it depends how you're doing it. Builders, maybe the seller. If the economy's shut down, you have like local governments working at half capacity. It really can throw a lot off, but it does clearly show, you know, even though they're all ugly, it does clearly show that the South and the South is below the average. The Northeast is below, although that doesn't parse out New York folks from the rest of it. We don't know how badly New York weighed on that. But the Midwest that put in a lot of draconian orders, and the West, they really hurt this index. I mean, the Midwest together as a whole is 22% down, which is, you know, that's not. We have seen, you know, teen jumps in this index. It happens. You know, it is.
I'd be very curious to know how many of
the West falling 27%.
How many of home sales in the spring? What percent is people from the Northeast or the Midwest going down there to buy second vacation homes?
Yeah,
or second homes, or people transitioning from retiring from the Midwest and the Northeast and going down to Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, even North Carolina. Although North Carolina might be mid-Atlantic, not South. I'm not really sure how they split up the regions.
That's right. It's mid-Atlantic technically.
But I just wonder how.
Or maybe Virginia ends the mid-Atlantic. Actually,
if I wonder on an annualized basis, or particularly in the spring months, how many of the sales in Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina are from people out of state.
Yeah, and that
could be 25%.
That would be something, Tim, to keep an eye on,
because clearly travel was restricted, and if you know.
Well, I know people who say, I'm from up north. I'm from New York. I lived my family in New Jersey. You know, we were part of that exodus, that Italian exodus out of New York into Jersey. I still have family there. I have friends there. I know a lot of people who say that if, for instance, you know, summer camp doesn't open in the summer, if parks, you know, I'm talking about recreational parks, things like that, entertainment, if this stuff doesn't kick off, and then God forbid, if they try to pull something come the fall with children in school, they will leave. I mean, they are not alone. So I don't know who's going to be left to foot the bill for his new testing regime. Yeah, right. He's going to be begging the federal government because there's not going to be anybody left to pay the burden. I'm looking at the GDP. I don't think many people saw this. Everybody was waiting for this first quarter advance this morning. Right before the first quarter advance came out, the Bureau of Economic Analysis had gross domestic product by state, fourth quarter and annual, and it was for all of 2019. And the reason why I care is because we do this. So we put these maps up on People's Pundit Daily, and people can see which states are growing the fastest or they're not the fastest now, and which states are doing the best and the worst, and then which industries are contributing to that growth. And prior to the coronavirus collapse here, it was all of what was noteworthy is that it was a lot of energy, Tim, and it was a lot of states. It were a lot of states that Trump won that should not have won. So, according to conventional wisdom, Pennsylvania, Michigan, again, Ohio, he won handily, right?
Right.
And then even in Texas, which we've gone over this now in the voter analysis that people think is going to, or it could get more competitive. Colorado, which we were talking about yesterday, very close state in 2016, but one that has been trending Democratic. And more Democratic every year, it appeared, until Trump tightened that up. I'm just saying it's interesting because now under Trump, it was energy and generally speaking, goods producing sector jobs that was doing it. And services, basically the part-time service and professional economy under Barack Obama had been giving way to a more working man, working woman economy with higher paying jobs. I'm looking at 2019. This was going to continue too, Tim. This was going to continue. Did energy ease back a little bit? Sure, it did. I mean, that's just when you have sometimes folks. With Tim and I were talking on the phone the other day, I said we got spoiled a little bit with some of this because sometimes there's nowhere to go but up, but down. When you're up, there's nowhere to go but down. So mining was the leading contributor to the increase in real GDP in Texas, which was the fastest growing state. Mining. And that this is 2019 pre-COVID collapse. All right. Going from first quarter to fourth quarter. So excluding the quarter that we just got reported today. And now they have their third and final estimate. They can put out more detailed numbers. And I just think it's freaking sad is what it is, Tim. It's frustrating and it's sad because a lot of this stuff that I'm reading about, those are the people who are going to be hurt. A lot of them are going to be hurt. We're talking about Diamond the other day and It just sucks. It sucks, and look at Twitter, by the way, they're having a field day with it. What kind of people, I'm talking about the president's enemies, what kind of people cheer and laud the collapse of GDP? What kind of person do you have to be to cheer for the collapse of gross domestic product in an otherwise, let me pull up this chart. This is one thing that everybody should know about this report. Yes, and it sucks. It went down, folks, and it's not good. It's a worse number than we thought. Can you guys all see that, right? Everybody can see this, Tim. There's the chart for gross domestic product. This is in the story on People's Pundit Daily, which is at the front page right now. Advanced Q1 GDP for 2020 fell 4.8%. They were still having impact because mitigation efforts were still underway. Notice, what should we look at, Tim, to compare Trump to Obama? Let's go, for instance, 2009, 01 to now. Okay, let's do that. There we go. This is Barack Obama coming out of the financial crisis. Really, he gets credit for pulling us out of the financial crisis, Tim, since it's all about GDP today. And people are cheerleading the collapse of the American economy on Twitter because they hate Trump so much. Let's just do this, okay? Here's the gray area for the Great Recession. We were out of the Great Recession, folks. Basically, we started pulling ourselves out before Barack Obama ever took office. That really is the truth. You don't hear about that, but here's October 2009. Here's November. Here's January 2010. My point is the worst was behind us before he took the oath of office, and I don't even have the whole recession in here. All right. So anyway, he took the oath, Tim. If the election was in 28, right? 08, he takes the oath in January. The recession, January 1st, 2009, goes back here. He got basically a few months and we were already on the upswing, is my point of showing this. But if you go through, and if you have listened to the show before, the first quarter for most of Barack Obama's tenure was a throwaway quarter. It was often negative or very weak. All right. -1, -0.1. Again, very weak. There we go. There's April right there. 0.5. January 2014, -1.1. We had no quarter since Donald Trump. No first quarter came in negative. We had 1 weak quarter, Tim, which was his very first quarter. That was the weakest quarter we had under Donald Trump. And it was partially it was still Obama's policies, so it kind of makes sense. And then the optimism that flowed through the country had a lot to do with it, the gain that we saw before policies began to take effect. Even in a more weaker time of the Trump era, we didn't see these wild gyrations. We saw steady, solid growth, and now we're dropped off because of this virus and these mitigation efforts. So for these people, they're on Twitter celebrating this, Tim. Here are the numbers right here. Verified Twitter. Your guy was a failure. He kept bobbing in and out of negative territory and had the worst historic average GDP growth for any president since the Great Depression. This was solid and consistent, Tim. Something an economy could really build on. And they're celebrating that. They're disgusting.
I don't think that surprises anyone. I mean,
they're disgusting people, though. Only disgusting people would be able to celebrate.
That's why they want to keep the economy shut down as long as possible.
I think
the reality is, we're 6 months and a week from the election. By the time we get there, it'll be very clear to everyone that the economy is not only roaring back, but that a lot of the supply lines that had been transitioned to China as long as 20, 25 years ago are coming back to this country also.
And Tim, he saved Tyson yesterday with that executive order. We didn't even get into that. Nobody's really even talking about that. I mean, they went to him and they said, our supply lines are breaking down. This is not, we need your help. He gave it to them.
Right.
I wonder, do you think Obama or Biden would help the private sector like this, or would they be looking?
Their solution would be to nationalize the business.
That's right.
And then they could have better day-to-day control over it.
That's exactly right. That's 100% true. That's exactly where I was going. Would they be focusing their time on helping the private sector through this? Or, like Tim said, would they be looking for opportunities to implement the crisis in Leviathan? Where could I take over? Where could I pretend like I'm the hero who swoops in to save the day? Because that's how this works. They create a problem. They create a crisis. And they propose they're the solution to that crisis. I mean, it's crazy. Even if I don't understand, part of how we got here, Tim, which is why I like business reporting so much more and that's the truth, than political report. I really do, because it used to be just about numbers. How did financial reporting get so tainted like this? This was the one area of media reporting. And I've talked to Charles Payne about this. This is the one area of reporting where it was never like this. I have not been, as long you've been on Wall Street, Tim, longer. Charles Payne has been reporting a lot longer than I've been the editor of People's Pundit Daily. And people tell me this was not like this. You did not celebrate the decline of the economy just because of your personal political views. I mean, but of course, this was very like you said, and you really did put it best. Who was surprised, right? Surprised. I mean, so, this is where we got. I'm going to pull the screen away. I can't even look at it anymore. All right. Maybe we'll, why don't we do an early quick, why don't you do like a quick run through the markets? And then this way I'll get into New Mexico. And guys, I promise we are going to circle back and we're going to finish New Mexico tomorrow. We'll do it. You know what? It'll be even better, Tim, because we'll kind of just do like a review and then we'll have more. Actually, technically, we'll have more time to get into more detail about it, right? So because it's very, sparse population centers. But if you were watching Colorado yesterday, then you're going to understand the situation in Mexico. It's just exponentially worse if you're a Republican, better if you're a Democrat, and then it'll make more sense. And if you didn't see Colorado yesterday, you should circle on back, because that's gonna Arapahoe is gonna be like front and center in the whole north to northwest to northeastern part of the state. All right, Tim, why don't you go ahead and take it away, and I'll cool down and come back.
So, I mean, again, the market's just having a very, very good day today. I'm frankly a little surprised. I thought that the Google earnings last night might have turned into a sell on the news event where they have real good earnings. The stock is up after hours on a knee-jerk reaction. There's a lot of amateurs that try to play the stock in after hours that really shouldn't. But the stock is having follow through this morning, and you're having a move higher pretty much across the board. The Dow is up 1.8%. The S&P 500 is up 2.1%. The NASDAQ is up 2.8%. And the Russell is up 3%. This is a very broad-based rally. And actually, the broad market yesterday acted much better than the averages. The advanced decline line was 2.6 to 1 positive, even though the Dow finished slightly in the negative, and the S&P finished just by the smallest. Really, the S&P finished pretty much unchanged. And really what we saw yesterday, it's very interesting to see what the final numbers turn out today. But we saw the stocks that had been the strongest sectors in the among the S&P sectors. There's 11 sectors in the S&P 500. Healthcare, communication services, which a lot of it is internet-related stuff, and information technology. Those were down 1.5% to 2% yesterday, where the stocks that had been the worst performing stocks, energy, materials, and industrials, were all up right around 2%. So it's very striking when you see a group of 3 sectors up 2%, 3 sectors down 2%. The overall market basically unched down a little bit. And it shows that you might potentially be having some a beginning of some very significant sector rotation, which of course the market always needs if it's going to extend its rally from just one small group driving the gains.
Right. So that is broad-based over there. Tim.
Now, the other
is very
side,
broad-based.
It is, but the other side, today we're having a very broad-based rally. The other side of that is it's very possible that we just had a lot of short covering in stocks that have been very beaten up. Even the energy names, despite the price of oil going down again yesterday, very much a technical move. Even most of the business networks today are referring to July as the front month for oil, even though the June contract is still going to trade until the end of May.
Right.
But we're still going to have a big storage issue. So these ETFs that use the physical commodity, primarily the USO and a couple of others, they're now rolling out. They're pretty much done with it from June to July, and they're going to be using July as the front month, because they don't want to get trapped in the same situation they were in last month.
Right. And somebody said, well, you were talking is funny. Obama doesn't want the economy anymore. Obama doesn't want to take credit for the economy anymore. Oh, what a shocker. Right. And then also too, because it's going to go quick. Before I get into New Mexico, Justin Amash, right?
Yep.
Let me address Justin Amash. So he formed an exploratory committee. He's facing a tough reelection, and people getting questions about him. I think that Justin Amash will pull votes from both people if he ends up running as a libertarian. If you've been watching the voter analysis, of course, it's, this is an effort to siphon votes away from Donald Trump. Justin Amash knows he's not going to win. The cheerleading for him in editorials in the Washington Examiner and other places where there's still never Trumpers and National Review, they know Justin Amash is not a serious candidate with a serious shot of winning the presidency. They know their article, well, the time is now, is not a serious editorial in support of a serious candidate. It is an effort to siphon votes away from Donald Trump. However, I think that in some places that's going to happen, Tim. But if they've been watching the voter analysis, there's also places where there are going to be Republicans who don't like Trump. They're just like, and they would have voted for Biden if there was no libertarian candidate. But then because he's jumping in the mix, they'll vote for him. So he will take absolutely take votes away, and young votes too, by the way. Libertarians siphon young votes that are otherwise Democratic votes. We just don't know for sure yet the damage that's going to do. And if and when we do partner with one of those media outlets we were telling you about, I will promise you all right now, I will ask Amash supporters which candidate they lean to more, if they, Biden or Trump. I will ask that, I promise. But let's first get into New Mexico. Get into New Mexico. Tim, yesterday we talked about Colorado. We all know how I feel about Brad Parscale's idea that he can win the state of New Mexico, and Colorado is another thing. We went over that yesterday, and I wanted to do it first because we were looking at Arapahoe, and that was a county where Republicans have done significantly worse over the years. And we showed you when George Bush ran against Al Gore and John Kerry, how that county voted and some of the other areas voted. Yeah, there are areas where Trump made gains, as compared to Bush, but the high population centers in sparsely populated states are trending Democratic, and Trump would need to, we talked about yesterday, right? Santa Cruz, Douglas, Arapahoe, over and over and over and over and over, and Santa Cruz, you know what I mean? Over and over and over. Today is somewhat similar. It's just much harder, right? So Trump won 30% of the Hispanic vote in the state of Colorado, and they were about 20, percent of the vote, depending on which, exit poll, or if you believe it, if you're modeling it yourself. I know some people, that have very good cases for the exit polls being wrong. In 2016, Hispanics were 40% of the vote in New Mexico. And Gary Johnson on the ballot, very popular former governor of the state, he was on the ballot. He got 9.3%, or just about 74,541 votes. All right. He is obviously not going to be on the ballot this time. So let's just jump into the giant advantage that Democrats have. And I know Brad's argument, Tim, and he says, not only are we going to make gains with Hispanic voters, but we're going to make gains with Democratic voters. And he'll cite when they're at the rallies that whatever it is, 20, whatever it may be, percent were registered Democrats, and that some were registered as, they never voted. And he
always highlights that, at least on his Twitter stream, right, the day after the rally. Right.
And he'll say this many, right? There are, in 2016, 41%. That would have to be true, is my point. Trump won 8% of the Democratic vote in 2016 in that state. 8%. That's it. And he won, he only lost 6% of the Republican vote. So the crossover, as is often the case, the crossover vote was higher for Democrats. They can afford to lose more crossover. He won independents by 5 points in the state. However, he would need to do what Brad is claiming. He really would, because Democrats were 41% of the vote. Republicans were 27%. Independents were 32%. Here's the real shocker. Outside of midterms, that's about as good as we've seen it in recent elections in New Mexico for a Republican candidate. It can get even uglier. And let's show you why. Okay. Let's take a look at why. And look, all the political stars can align here, folks. There can always be political stars, that align perfectly the way they align for Doug Jones in Alabama, an incredibly hard state for a Democrat to win, almost win in Mississippi against Tom Bevan in Kentucky. By the way, Tennessee, one of the biggest, I saw that in the question before. Tennessee, Tim and I were talking before the show, 50% capacity for stores starting next week, I believe, in Tennessee. But they're dropping their orders today, and they're going to allow most businesses with reduced capacity to operate. Let's just run an outright voter analysis, right? We're casting a very large net: party, gender, household income, marital status, ethnicity, education, and religion. And again, tomorrow I'll show some maps today, but we're not going to have time to run through it all. So we'll really get into it more tomorrow. Okay. So if you have some really great questions, save them for tomorrow. If I glance over and look at them and see them today, I'll answer. But I'm trying to just get the basics out of the way. Here is the full voter file, that very wide net. If you were watching last week about response rates and likely voter models, the difference between voter files and online panels in 2016, the research we did to show you, then you know this is that very first column. They're not going to vote at as high rates. You're not going to see the largest percentage vote at high rates in this. This is the very big net, very wide net. I mean, and we'll do a likely voter in a second. But right off the jump, Democrats are at 46%. Republicans down here, they're just under 30. This is a gain, Tim. I just want to point something out. It's important. That's a gain. I know it sounds terrible, but Republicans were like 24. That was really where they would it was not, uncommon. So they're coming up on 30%, Tim. That's the point. I don't know if you can hear me over there, but
yeah, I got you. I got you.
They're coming up on 30%. They were in the low to mid 20s for a while, and they're making some progress here. The nuns, though, some may have come from nuns. I imagine others came from migration, not immigration. So you have states like California and other, high tax blue states. People leave. They tend to be more conservative, which is why the big media argument that, it's California turning Texas red, or that's not, it's immigration. There's a difference between migration and immigration. Competitive on the presidential level. Immigration alone, like it did to California decades ago, immigration alone changed this state. You can take out all of the other factors and you would still have a Bush v. Gore, Bush v. Kerry competitive kind of margin state. Immigration on its own decreased the share of the white swing vote and increased the share of the liberal Hispanic vote. It's really that simple, folks. It really is that simple. And I'm going to show you that with the maps. I mean, we know where different groups of people live in the state. And we know how they've trended over the years. We know by looking at the exit polls over 20 years. That is what happened, as it is happening in Nevada, as it is has happened in Colorado, as it did happen in California. And if you're watching Arizona, that's what's going on in Arizona. I mean, there's a big difference between migration and immigration. All right. So, all right, let's go down, though. I'm not going to skip over income and everything for right now. Ethnicity, Hispanics, right here, 20% of the overall voter file. They flex their muscles quite a bit when they vote. Like I said, they will end up making about 4 in 10. Some probably, maybe even more now, Tim. Maybe even more. And then the unknown vote is huge here. People are very tight with that information, as we've talked about before, and they don't have to give it out. We, in the end, infer it, which I'm not going to get into how we do, but it's accurate. But when we don't know, we'll tell you we don't know. And here, we don't know what a lot of people, but we do know what other electorates look like. So we'll just have to watch when we change the voter propensity score and we tighten the likely voter screen, the difference in the change of these numbers. So just keep an eye on the difference in the change. Caucasian is 1 in 3. That is white people. For people who don't know these, Caucasian white is a third of the electorate. You have very small numbers of others here. African Americans. Tim and I were talking about this unknown thing, Tim. Where did let me pull this up somewhere else and I can give you a much more detailed look. So Asians were about 1%. Asians. Other race, which we have Native American populations in New Mexico. We have Pacific Islander, I think is the right way to classify. They are in there with other race as well. In 2016, they were about 10% of the vote, 10% of the vote. Okay. Yep. So, yeah. So, and they vote Democratic, by the way. So, well, actually, I don't want to give you guys the throw up, here, make you throw up but I want to show you, while we can't see, while this understates the strength of Latino voters in the state. Religiosity and the sect of religion can give you a a lot of insight into those unknowns that otherwise maybe you don't know. 31% are Catholic. Whites in this state are largely Protestant. All right. Those who are and classify themselves as religious, they're largely Protestant. So the Catholic white voters tend to be a little bit more liberal. But that's not who makes up this chunk of vote right here. This is a Latino vote. And then Eastern Orthodox, you even have some. I mean, it's very small, but for the most part, Protestant. And Tim, worth noting, the Protestant vote here is less conservative than it can be in other areas because they have that Western state progressive undertone. Yeah. Think, guys, back to the progressive era, the Holy Warriors, that's their roots. Those are their roots out there. Those who fought for, progressive ideals and values, originally progressive ideals and values. And again, before I go to the next with the voter propensity score, like Colorado, look at where the votes are. Okay. This is Santa Fe. All right. This is Santa Fe is where Democrats do much more damage than they do here, where Albuquerque is. There's Albuquerque and Bernalillo, or Bernalillo, whatever. And then you have Santa Fe over here. All right. And then Los Alamos is to the north of that. Republicans do much better in Albuquerque, in and around, and it's really the Santa Fe area that is where they get crushed, Tim. Santa Fe.
That makes sense to me. Very, very artsy, very probably expensive, upper income area.
That's a great way to, and other people would say, people who think they're better than other people would say that's cultured. They're cultured. I can't stand that, by the way.
Right.
Other people have culture too. They just have different culture, that they have stronger convictions, so, I can't stand the use of the word cultured. I've been in like both classes of people, and it's just so damn pretentious. But Santa Fe, Clinton got over 71% of the vote, Tim, just over. And in San Miguel, which is to the east of Santa Fe, let me show people that. Here's Santa Fe, here's San Miguel, right? Las Vegas, it says. Clinton got about in the 60s. It was 67.8. But again, a lot less population. She got a little over 7,000 votes. Trump got 2,300. But in Santa Fe, she netted 35,000 votes. That's a lot for a state that doesn't have a lot. She got almost 51,000 votes. Trump got 14.3, Tim, 14,300. Johnson, this was an area Johnson did well. He took, as in 6.1, still below his state level average, but he took 4,500 votes, basically. Sandoval, I'm pointing to in a second. I'm going to highlight because this matters. Think about how we talked about Colorado yesterday, which was absolutely necessary. Sandoval is the county equivalent. Here it is right here. Is the county equivalent of the one in Colorado we highlighted and talked about so much yesterday, guys. This is where Republicans have lost a lot of the state, okay? There's a good deal of votes out there. So let's see. Clinton got 27,700. Trump got 25,900. So it was very close in Sandoval. But when we get into map comparisons, and I can show you real quick. I'm not gonna stay on it, but just to show you. George W. Bush carried Sandoval County twice. All right, in his victories. He lost, but barely lost the state. He lost the state, but he won in 2000 and 2004. He won, of course, both elections, but they were very close in New Mexico. That was the last time Republicans really contested for it. In 2000, it was tens of percentage points, Tim. Let's see. Oh, right. It's remarkable. Al Gore won the state by about 300 votes. I'm not going to get into the percentage points, but we're talking about less than 1/10 of a percentage point, Tim. It was like .06. It was
I
about
remember it was very close.
very close. Al Gore had 286,783 votes. George Bush had 286,417. It was very close. And then Kerry did a little bit better. He won by about 6,000 votes. That's almost 6,000 on the money. It was 6,012 votes. And that is, I would argue, even though Bush did better in 2004 with Hispanic voters overall, I would argue that the war footing cost him a state like this because, or made it worse anyway, because they were more concerned about government programs domestically than they were about. So instead, why are you nation building abroad when you could be nation building at home? It is 10:45. I have some time. I could do the likely voter model and not, I can do it and not cut out, just at least showing you the map a little bit. Here is George Bush 2000 versus Al Gore, 300 vote margin. You can see Sandoval County there is red. All right. So let me show you. Keep an eye on it. Sandoval's here, folks. Right here. All right. To the west of Santa Fe, which is really, like I said, that's where Democrats, they do well. There's Sandoval County. And as you can tell, it is red. Here it is in 2004. I'm sorry. You'll see it's actually redder. What happened is the margin in and around you have Santa Fe, and then you have Albuquerque to the south of Sandoval County. And Democrats did better in Albuquerque and did better in Santa Fe. So because the population zones were bigger, if you do better among those groups, you can actually lose some of these other areas by more than you did the first time, but the margin widens from 400 or 300 and change, 400 votes to 6,014, whatever it was. And then here's Trump. Watch Sandoval County. Here's Trump v. Clinton. Okay. You see how all those population centers, she widened out her support there. All right. And it didn't really matter that Trump was able to actually do things like Colfax. Like he's done
a couple areas that he won that,
that's right.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
He flipped Colfax. I want to say too, there's more. So when Bush barely lost against Gore, he did Gore carried Colfax. I don't remember how much it was, but it was a slight carry. And then again, Trump did better there. He carried that by like 400 points. San Miguel, though, is where he got clobbered. Bush did a little bit better over there margin-wise, clearly. And there are some areas where Trump was able to widen out his margin, like in smaller areas like Harding. It wasn't 52-48, Tim. It was like 60-30, with the third-party candidates in there. Trump, was able to reach 60s in a lot of these smaller Roosevelt, okay? Stuff like that. And then his best county was a very small county. I'm trying to look for it. Now, there it is. Catron, or however you say, Catron, whatever. It's in the western part of the state. It is here, right here. I got to get rid of that map for you guys to see it. It is in the western part of the state right here, talking about almost 72% of the vote. But look where the voters are. The dots are the voters. They're colored by partisans. Red is Republican, blue is Democrat, and that blob right here of independence is independence, that teal. This is why in Albuquerque, Republicans can tighten their margin. It's Santa Fe where they're going to get crushed. Like Tim said, even the independents out in Santa Fe are not independents like you'll see outside around Albuquerque. They're much more conservative here. And even to the south in Valencia. But Santa Fe, it's a totally different population. It can almost be a different state. I'm serious. It can be almost like a different state. Same thing with San Juan out in the northwestern part of the state, which Trump did carry, and he carried it handily. They're 61% of the vote. Those are independents, which you can see a lot of. They are more conservative than you'll find in Albuquerque. So I want to save the maps for more detail, though, tomorrow, Tim, because, like we did with Colorado. So let me do the vote propensity score with 10 minutes left, and take some questions. But, you know, some of them I may have to, I'll be able to answer tomorrow, folks. So, you know, forgive me if I say, oh, wait till tomorrow on that. All right. So let's run it again. I'm going to keep all of the defaults. We're down to now 481,000 voters. Okay. That is significantly less than a presidential election. It's usually around 700 and change, 800 and change. But this is what we know. So we know these people, things about them. We're not going to they don't go into the model if we don't have enough information. Did Democrats change all that much? No, they didn't. They ticked up actually a little bit. No, actually, they're about the same. If you were to round, I just, in my mind, I'm looking at tens of percentage points, but they're about the same, around 48%. Republicans shot up to 35%. So that's much closer to for the Democrats. That's much closer than we've seen with some of those other states where the likely voter model clearly benefits the Republican. Now, nuns fall to 16.2, 16.24. They're going to be 32%. Independents are going to be 30 to 33% of the vote in the state of New Mexico. That is going to happen. Trump carried them, but he only carried them 42-37. Democrats have all of these wealth of voters here. And this is just that, like those high population centers. One more thing before we look at those high population centers. And this is too much Democrat, by the way. It is. It will be more Democrat than the electorate as a whole. About 31% Catholic, about 37% Protestant. So you did see a slight little bump there with Catholics, not by a whole lot. That tells you what I was telling you before. It's not Caucasians in that. Those are Democrats in that. So here we go. Back to the high population centers. There's Santa Fe. You can still see a lot of Republicans in there. You can. But this is where, you know, the independent vote now is significantly fallen off this map. It's looking redder with blue bleeding around the edges. And then a lot of those teal blobs have basically disappeared in and around Albuquerque. And that's to be expected, because what I'm telling you is a lot of those independents where Republicans made those gains, they really didn't. The independent vote is going to be there. They're going to lean Republican typically. They do more often than not, even though 2018 was ugly for Democrats. I mean, for Republicans, Tim. That vote, just was lopsided with the independent vote. It was lopsided. You know, it was ugly for them. But I'm gonna save. We got like 8 minutes, 7 minutes. I'm gonna save. I'm going to save the maps. I really want to dig into the maps, and we'll go county by county. All right. But yeah, let's get into a couple of questions, because that's really where we're at on this. Tim, it was an 8.5 almost point loss in 2016. Okay. It was supposed to be worse than that, even though some polls did show that it was tightening toward the end. It was. But I mean, what do you think? It's a heavy lift. I mean, we haven't gotten into it fully yet, but even just from today on the surface, you think I laid out the case here? What a heavy lift this is? Or?
Yeah, I think it's a heavy lift, but I think if the challenge would be to get Hispanics to vote for Trump on immigration to the same extent that they do in Texas, if not in Florida.
Yeah, you would need to bring him. And Brad, what was the last time I heard him talk? And maybe some of the viewers and listeners out there know this. I mean, I don't watch him often, but last time I want to say he said he was in the 40s or low 40s or at 40s or something with them in New Mexico.
I would think that's a good number.
If that was true, yeah, then we'd be looking at a race, Tim, and it would have to be, there would have to be overlap there, because let me nest, and you guys won't be able to see this, but let me nest two variables. All right. And then I'll be able to show you.
And I don't know what the Native American population is there. Clearly, it's more significant as a percentage, I'm sure, than in a lot of other states. But I think that I think the Trump administration has had some positive initiatives with the Native American community. I don't know if it will resonate, but I think they've had some positive initiatives with them.
Well, I would they're about, the other category is where Native Americans and Pacific Islanders, which are a lot less, they're going to fall. Again, I mean, I think it's safe to say single digits, but they voted still for Hillary Clinton. You know what? Let me give a couple of these things just so people understand how different New Mexico does vote, okay? Men, 44-42 Trump. Females, 54-36 Clinton. Okay. All age categories went for Clinton, except for 50-64, which was tied at 46. 65 and older went for Clinton, 53-42. Very different than other areas. White voters went for Trump by 5 points. They turned out to be about a half of the electorate. Like I said, they vote in higher rates. So while Latinos are going to be about 40, whites are going to be about half of the electorate in New Mexico. Black voters are like less than 1%, 1%. Asians, same thing. The voters Tim's talking about, they do make up the remaining chunk of that vote. They're, like I said, about 9% in 2016. They were 53-33 Clinton. So, Tim, if he could make up some ground there, right?
You would think he could cut that down to, 48, 42.
Yeah, I mean, if he did make up, some significant ground there, it could move. Look, elections are won on the margins, right? So if he does a little bit better with whites, for instance, again, only 5 points, or no, you know what? Hold ground with whites. Just hold your ground with them. If you want to increase them a little bit, great. But non-whites were altogether 51% of the electorate. Brad is saying they're in the 40s for Trump in New Mexico. He lost them to Hillary Clinton, Latinos alone, 54-33. If he was to make up the ground to like 10 points or something like that, right? Then that could nudge. And then he would have to. So this is what it would take. He would have to make up that kind of ground with Latinos. He'd have to widen just a little bit, if not hold his ground with whites. And he would have to make inroads with the other 10% that are largely made up of Native Americans and other voters. That's what it would take.
And you're not going to have a third-party candidate that's a former two-term governor of the state and was a Republican getting between 8 and 9% of the statewide vote.
If you look at, let's see, according to the exit polls, Gary Johnson hurt them about equally here among partisans. But get this, Tim, because if he takes
but from Democrats, that he probably took more Republican votes than,
I'm just telling you based on the
Democratic votes. Could some of those Republican votes have been crossover votes? Maybe, but
if you take the same share,
not a positive.
Oh my God, it's almost 11. If you take the same share, right, Tim, for each, but one party is 41% of the electorate and the other party is 27%, then he definitely disproportionately would hurt the Democrat more. But here's where it's unclear, because he took 16% of the independent vote. So if that vote was a Trump vote, and it is 42-37, that's where he would have hurt Donald Trump, is my point. Really, the 6% of the Republicans, of course, but 6% of 24 or 23, 27, sorry, 6% of 27% does not equal 6% of 41%. 6% of 41 is greater than 6% of 27. And independents are 32. So that's where he really would have hurt Donald Trump. I know it flew by, guys, and I promise I'll make this up tomorrow. I promise. Right, Tim? We're going to get into this.
Yes.
I had some stuff that I absolutely had to take care of, so I had to cut this short to an hour. Laura, this is why it's 2 hours. See? I hope she hears that. All right? And she says, can't you guys do this in an hour? No, can't. Right? It's a 2-hour show. But listen, we didn't even run through the spiels. I'm going to save it for tomorrow. You guys know how to support us. Follow Tim Anderson on Twitter at TJAnderson1. Follow him on Twitter, guys. And I am at peoples_pundit. If you are new and you're watching right now on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube, please. And Facebook, go ahead and like the page. We're going to blow that announcement out tomorrow. We're going to have some cool announcement tomorrow, folks. It's going to be neat. And then, we'll be bringing you, some numbers at the top of the show. It'll be neat. But I'll save it for tomorrow. Right, Tim? All right, folks. We love you too. I see your comments. We love you too. All the best. We will see you again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll wrap up New Mexico, talk more about the economy.